Hello interwebs, my name is Sunny and I, like almost everyone else, have been playing an obscene amount of webfishing. Webfishing is a brilliant multiplayer game, and let's discuss why that is, shall we? Webfishing displays all of the traits of a culture within its limited context, creating a surprisingly tight-knit community. Webfishing is an online multiplayer fishing game that focuses on slowing down. The game's relaxing music and low-poly art style pave the way for a calm, serene game. Everything in this game takes time. Fishing, metal detecting, art, and even your run speed are relatively slow. In those slow moments, you might as well strike up a conversation with the people in your lobby. Despite being a relatively simple game, webfishing not only has a community, but also a culture. I hope to take a snapshot of this culture and demonstrate all of the aspects that the community has worked so hard on. In doing this, we can fully appreciate each and every player's contributions to creating a culture. There's a tendency, especially online, for people to consider multiplayer games as either fun party games or filled with vile hatred, and thus they disregard the impact of these games. However, where there's a culture, there is meaning. A common definition of culture was created by Edward Tyler in 1871. He defines it as that complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Culture is a learned set of traits that impacts the behaviors and thoughts of those within it. Pretty simple, right? There are 5 key traits of culture. The first is that culture is learned. It's not something you are born with. The second is that culture is symbolic. The members of a culture should be able to recognize certain symbols and be able to ascribe meaning to them. Thirdly, culture is an adaptation to a particular environment and is shaped by said environment. Fourth, culture consists of a collection of traits. These traits may seem trivial on their own, but when combined, they significantly shape the culture they belong to. If any of these traits change, the culture itself will also change. Finally, the 5th trait is that cultures are ever-changing, which is relatively self-explanatory. If I can prove that webfishing follows all these traits and the traits Tyler created, knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, law, and customs, then I should be able to pretty solidly prove that webfishing has culture. Before I can prove webfishing has culture, we first have to discuss why it matters, whether or not it has culture. The reason it matters is because culture has real-world ramifications. Culture shapes the ways people think and act. In doing this, we can fully understand why webfishing is so brilliant and help those who may think of video games as just games know why we care so much about them. I would also like to create an ethnographic present in this ethnography. An ethnographic present is a snapshot of how a culture exists in the current present. My final reason for doing this is just for funsies. I like anthropology and I like video games. Must I need another reason? Webfishing has built a large and thriving community centered around love. Love for music, art, fish, and those around you. New players are treated kindly and are helped without any ulterior motives. Sharing knowledge is viewed as a rewarding experience rather than a burden. Players enjoy engaging in meaningful conversations with travelers, uncovering their deepest secrets and offering solace to those in need. Even though they may never meet these individuals again, they find fulfillment in connecting with lost souls, strangers passing in the permarine voids. Players draw art that will inevitably be deleted, drawn over, or erased when the lobby goes down, and play music for the people who just so happen to be in the area. There is no request for money or recognition, though it is always appreciated. Players are kind, loving, and passionate simply because that is how they are. This is a product of webfishing's culture. First, let's discuss how I collected my data. I collected my data through 3 types of fieldwork: passive observation, in-game and out-of-game interviews, and monitoring community forums like Reddit, Tumblr, and Steam. I would like to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in this study. The data for the study is mostly qualitative. The research has been conducted over 1 month. If this was an official anthropology thing, I would have dedicated more time. However, this is just a passion project. I discussed with people from high school age to working adults. Not infrequently, people would be playing during work shifts, having fishing open on one monitor and their work open on another. The majority of the player base is queer, disabled, and/or neurodivergent, though I did meet many cis, straight, able-bodied, neurotypical people. Several participants theorized the cause of this is because of how inclusive webfishing is, compared to many other popular chat rooms. However, However, this is the topic of a different research paper. In the cosmetics shop, the most expensive identity title is the straight title. I don't know why this is, and I don't want to force the creator into an ideology that they do not believe in, so just file that away from now. We will come back to this by the end of the paper. An interesting note is that the majority of players said that they do not enjoy fishing in real life. I was provided with many reasons, such as impatience, lack of reward for the time put in, dislike of removing fish from the hook, environment, and most interestingly, the social stigma around fishing. Many players said that they might have enjoyed fishing if it wasn't for the impression they had that fishing wasn't for them. Fishing is for married men to go with their buddies and beer and not for our participants. They felt like they were unwelcome in fishing culture. That's why culture is so important. Not only does it shape the people within it, but also the people observing them from the outside. Our goal is to view the cultures around us with cultural relativism, or understanding a culture within its context, challenges, and resources. Viewing a culture with disgust or discomfort is called ethnocentrism. Things may seem weird to us, but are completely normal in other cultures. On the other side of the coin is romanticism, or viewing a culture as superior or purely positive, which is also not great. Think about how people who view Japan as so futuristic and way advanced. Both romanticism and ethnocentrism are bad because they require viewing other cultures purely on how they relate to your own culture. Before conducting interviews, I first had to immerse myself in the culture. I did this by joining many lobbies and having casual conversations with the members. At this point, I didn't intend on writing a paper, I just wanted to unwind with a cool new game. By just playing normally, I naturally found myself discussing and learning about the culture. I hadn't thought anything of these conversations until an event. I was playing in a lobby with one other person, the host. The host was away from their computer for a bit and I was just fishing when a player joined. I started with my usual, "Hey, how are you doing?" But the player just stood there. They were a green cat with tired eyes. Their name tag read Grincher. I didn't think anything of this and then they left. The next day, a different lobby player said, "So, what's up with the Grincher guy?" The lobby was then filled with stories, both real and fake, everything from "he's just a weird guy who doesn't talk" to "he spreads viruses that corrupt your computer and curse you." That's when everything clicked into place for me. Folklore, art, music, rituals, holy herring, that's a culture. So I started fieldwork. In addition to passive observation, I conducted interviews using 3 main methods: personal lobbies, lobby hopping, and forum interviews. I created a lobby titled Interview Central, Can I Ask You Questions?, where I waited for people to join. However, this approach turned out to be the least effective. I only managed to conduct 7 interviews this way, which was the lowest number I had attained from any method. The next method involved jumping between lobbies and asking players for interviews. I made an effort to ensure a balance of different types of lobbies, including named and unnamed, 18+ in general, as well as small, large, modded, scripted, and vanilla lobbies. By this point, it was before patch 1.11, so I couldn't just look at tags to see what type of lobby to join. It is noteworthy that lobbies are semi-region locked, filled predominantly with people from a specific region. The regional factor is why I had to imply my third method. Thirdly, I used platforms like Tumblr, Reddit, which was not very effective, and Steam to interview members of the communities. I had many participants in this study, though not quite as many as a full anthropologist should typically gather. Nevertheless, my 56 participants will suffice for about a month of fieldwork. I categorized participants into 3 groups: gatekeepers, key respondents, and regular participants. These categories are often used in anthropology to gain access to a culture. Gatekeepers were not people shouting, "You can't like fishing, name 5 fish." Rather, they were individuals whose association with me limited my ability to engage with other players. For instance, one dog that was very eager to be interviewed had previously taken an aggressive stance against modding. After I interviewed this dog, other members of the lobby refused to participate, even though they had been open to the idea before. This type of interaction is surprisingly common in anthropological studies, which is why there is a term that is used for it. In contrast, key respondents had the opposite effect. By interviewing them, I gained greater access to community members. For example, after interviewing someone on Steam, their friends began to trust me more and were willing to participate in the interviews. Some key respondents even went out of their way to help me find additional participants, which I greatly appreciated. Regular participants didn't affect my access to others, neither granting nor restricting it. It is important to note that there is nothing wrong with being any of these type of participants. They simply made my work a bit easier or harder. This entire study will be completely anonymous. Alrighty, we are finally ready to get into my results, so sit back and relax and let me paint you a landscape of the good, the bad, and the fishing. Let's start with learning culture. When a new player joins the game, there's a brief tutorial, which of course doesn't teach culture. Culture is rather learned through observation or mentors. Most players were either very new to the game or had been playing for over 6 hours or about 3 days. There were very few players in the middle transitioning stage. Also, in public lobbies with more than one player, there's almost always a high-level player. In my month of research, I only encountered 3 lobbies with entirely new players, and those were pre-existing friend groups. Many new players reported that they learned things like language, myths, and tips from simply listening when high-level players talked and gushed about how kind higher-level players were, taking time to explain in detail and sometimes several times specific things about playing the game. The process of being taught the rules and norms of a culture is called enculturation. So yes, in fact, this culture was learned and not something that any of the players were born with. But that was kind of obvious, so let's get into the harder parts. Next on our list is that culture is symbolic. First, what does that even mean? Let's say you were walking down the street and you see a sign. It is bright red, it has 8 sides, and it has the letters S, T, O, and P, which let you know what the sign means. Still, even without the letters, I bet you would know what it meant. The same way you would know what a peace sign or a heart represents. Now, how does this relate to web fishing? Well, web fishing has many symbols. For example, if you go to the main shop and you see a flag behind the wall, an encultured player would know exactly what this means. Some other examples are, what was that? Lead, voidin, golden, cryptid, rain lobby, and so on. A lot of the language used in web fishing is taken either from the game, like calling helicopter and sharks pizza cutters, because the game refers to them as nature's pizza cutters. But a lot of the common language you hear on lobbies stems from classic fishing phrases. Examples of this are phrases like, fish fear me, women love me, and are you done fishing? That's like asking if I'm done breathing. However, often web fishers will change the phrases until they are incomprehensible. One example is the phrase, fish fear me, women love me, going to, women fear me, fish love me, women scare me, or love fear me, women fish me, and so on. Other symbols include fishing rods and titles. They can be used to signal to other players your experience level since many are unlocked through game progression. Someone with a black and red alpha fishing rod can be easily identified as a high-level player, since it requires the player to collect every single fish in the alpha quality, which is the rarest and highest quality. The qualities in order from lowest to highest are normal, shining, glistening, radiant, and alpha. They are also associated with their star quality. 0 stars is normal, 1 stars is shining, 2 is glistening, and so on. A player who is high level might also have the title only for people who caught the super duper rare Golden Ray title, which is pretty self-explanatory. But titles can be used to express more than just how long you've been playing. For example, someone with a cryptid title may be aligned with the cryptid stalkers. We will get back to them. And several titles are locked to developers. There are also titles for specific genders and sexualities. Titles which players can use to express their orientation. Trust me, we will get back to this one. I'll just say that the game has more than a few controversies for now. On top of that, characters are highly customizable, with many different options to style your cat or dog, with several locked behind catching certain fish, while others are purchasable or can be found in treasure chests. The wide amount of customization allows players to look and sound however they like. Certain ways to look have associations, like the lobotomites, who look like this and run around causing chaos. There are also a couple of actions that become encultured in players. For example, typing /wag into chat, your animal's tail will wag. None of these meanings are kept secret, however, players are expected to learn them on their own or ask other players for their meaning. While we're still on the topic of expressing oneself, let's talk about art and music. There are 2 types of web fishing art, in-game and out-of-game. In-game art is made in one of 4 drawing areas using chalk. This art tends to be of other media or original characters rather than art of the game itself, though it is not exceedingly rare for in-game art to be of characters in-game. This art is guaranteed to be deleted. When the lobby is closed, the art isn't saved without mods and will be lost to time. Many players will share their art online, but many don't and just let it be appreciated by those who happen to be in the lobby at the time. You might be wondering, why make art knowing you'll be lost? To this question, I got many responses. The most frequent answers were, it's just for practice. I only intended it for people in the lobby, and I just like making art and I don't care who sees it. Part of what people like about the system is that there is no pressure on the art. Knowing you'll be lost inspires people to draw things they might not usually draw. There is no built-in rule about erasing art. Generally, on art-focused lobbies, the rule of thumb is to only erase finished art if there is no other room to draw. Even with these lenient rules, players will often go around making sure that it is fine to erase the art. The other type of webfishing art is out-of-game art, made about characters within the game. Frequently, this art will be made of the artist and their friends' animal avatars. The simplistic style and highly customizable characters leads to fun-to-adapt screenshots. Everyone's take on drawing the animals looks slightly different while also simultaneously fitting together. Music is also a large part of the game. Players can buy guitars or tambourines to play music. The guitar system is surprisingly robust and requires a good amount of real-life knowledge to play without mods. When a player plays guitar, the game's non-diegetic music stops and the guitar sounds travel pretty far across the lobby, if not the whole lobby. Since writing this, patch 1.11 has been released, introducing a volume slider for guitars, which may alleviate the volume issue. However, my fieldwork is complete, so you'll need to explore that on your own. Music is even less permanent since the player can only play for the people who are currently in the lobby, while art can be seen by future members of the lobby. Like art, there are etiquette rules around music playing. Don't play music while someone else is playing, don't join in unless they say it's fine, and sometimes players don't like people practicing on a large server since the volume travels so far. One great aspect of webfishing is that players have the freedom to name lobbies whatever they like. This allows them to indicate specific playstyles associated with that lobby. For example, some common lobby names include Art Lobby, Practicing Guitar and Chill, Rain Fishing, and Piss Hats Only. Additionally, players can create community-specific lobbies with titles like Gay and Stoned, Midwestern Fishing, or Women. Lobby titles can also serve various other purposes, such as indicating who runs the lobby, what mods are active, or simply creating a certain atmosphere through puns, references, or thoughtfully crafted names. Titles are used not only to attract ideal players, but to also ward off unwanted players. For example, a lobby titled Perma-Rain, Void, and Meteors indicates to players that mods are in use on the server. Many players don't like modding, so they'll see it as cheating or simply just not for them, preferring the vanilla gameplay. If a player who doesn't like modding sees this title, they can simply not enter the lobby. Rather than enter, realize, and then feel as if their time was wasted, they were tricked, or as if they were being forced to argue for their beliefs. However, this sometimes backfires. While mods versus no mods are one of the biggest debates within the game, there are many others, and where people feel strongly about a topic, there are those who take it too far. Some people seek out lobbies of people they don't agree with just to argue, spread hate, or to try and convert players to their side. Let's talk about belief in law. The law in webfishing falls into two categories. As members of the culture, you have two ways to persecute lawbreakers. Players can either kick a player, or if they're really breaking the rules, players can reach out via email or DM the developer of the game and request a patch for whatever issue they're causing. Both of these methods of punishment are out of the player's hands. The player has to hope the host or empathizes with their plight and takes action. Otherwise, the player either has to leave or try their best to ignore the problem. This can be bad in cases where it's impossible to kick. A couple of weeks ago, there was a bot titled the Department of Agriculture that would join and leave lobbies constantly, and every time they were kicked, they would simply join again. There was nothing any player of the open unmodded lobbies can do except to try their best to ignore it. The dev has done things to stop doxers and trolls allegedly, supposedly. These problematic players could be trolls, hackers, doxers, stalkers, or players just trying to cause a bit of chaos, like cryptids, Cheetos, or lobotomites. Cryptids are players usually using the cryptid title and off-putting looking avatars. These players watch other players from a distance, unspeaking, trying to scare players. Lobotomites dress up as players and play small pranks, grief players by punching them, and crowd around players. Cheetos are the rival, in heavy quotes, gang, doing the exact same thing except with different avatars. There are also prominent hackers like Grincher, Null, Ponds Closed, Webfishing Staff, Air Traffic Control, and so on, who like to try and shut down lobbies, send threatening mail, scrape people's IPs, make bots that repeatedly join servers, and mess with their saved data. For my research, these hackers aren't dangerous, but I do recommend not interacting with them, and if you are able to, join a different lobby. Don't reward them with attention, don't act scared of them or mythologize them. According to some of my key participants, allegedly these hackers hack for the sake of protecting servers from groomers because there are groomers on any chat room, collecting data, or just having fun, which is the most common response. One creator of many bots wanted to slow down lobbies to the point of crashing entirely, allegedly for fun. These players enjoy causing huge issues for other players in ways that cannot be stopped. When events occur beyond people's control, lack explanation, and empower some while diminishing others, this gives rise to beliefs, folklore, and religion. Noel took over my server, insisted on us playing a twisted game, and when we refused, he killed our animals with hyper-realistic blood eyes. Players are quick to run to forums to explain things as evil spirits or just rage baits trying to scare people. Both and everything in between is a religion. I admit, I am a religious person. Trust me, this is important, hold on. I believe in an unseeable force affecting everything, causing things to play out exactly as expected according to priests and professors of my religion. I frequently gather with other practitioners to discuss our ideas on why things work and explain things according to our holy scriptures and famous prophets following their steps in our rituals. Why do I hold on to these practices? Because they provide comfort. They offer explanations for why things happen as they do, a framework for understanding both the good and the bad. They also remind me of something greater than myself, a system of interconnected truths that give life meaning. Now, before you start making assumptions, let me clarify. My faith is not in the supernatural. My religion is college physics. My favorite prophet is Isaac Newton, and my most sacred text is College Physics, 3rd edition. Religion, according to anthropology, is ideas and practices that attempt to see beyond our immediate senses to reduce stress, provide moral examples, and/or create a sense of social solidarity. Frequent components of religion are symbols, objects, places, rituals, and leaders, though none of these are required. This includes classic colloquial religions such as Christianity and Islam, but also art, science, and math. When anthropologist Jared Diamond claims agriculture causes social stratification and discrimination, he makes agriculture as higher power the same way the Azande do when they ascribe illness and misfortune to witches. Thus, you understand why I say with complete sincerity that your friend comforting kids on Reddit is a priest. But there is more to the religion of webfishing than explaining creepypastas. It is also manifesting rain, reeling in every 3 seconds, tossing the golden lure because it is trash according to the community, reading the wiki to see statistics behind catching certain fish, and so on. The leaders are the developer and influencers posting video essays on cryptids. The places are lobbies, rituals are fishing, and so on and so forth. There's a whole world of fishing lines crossing in between each other, silently attracting players to each other, and building a tight-knit and diverse community. Even within game lobbies, people have their own separate customs. Within some lobbies, it is expected to welcome every member and ask how they are doing, while in others, not a single word is spoken. Players, upon joining, are expected to pick up on social cues and join in. If everyone is fishing on top of the lighthouse or in the void while a player does not have to join, they may be excluded from social interaction or pressured by other players to join. Social ostracization can often occur unintentionally, serving as a silent way to pressure a player to conform. This can happen for various reasons, such as not wearing the same outfits as other members, not participating in a particular conversation or bit, fishing alone, dressing in an unusual manner, or breaking an unspoken rule. Disagreeing publicly with a group's opinions may be even worse for players, leading to bullying, harassment, or even stalking. This can be caused by a difference in opinion on mods, pop culture, game strategy, identity, or really anything. Suppose the player who disagreed with a group didn't concede after the group made their collective argument. In that case, the lobby is usually cast into silence until one vocal player either changes the topic or doubles down on their argument. If the vocal player doubles down and no other player changes the topic, the debate will continue indefinitely until stopped. This conflict on several occasions has ended lobbies if the host doesn't pick a side and kicks the player on the other. Within this conflict, most players besides the main arguers will fall into 3 camps: those who stay completely silent, refusing to speak and only fish, those who occasionally pipe in with their opinion while remaining mostly silent, and people who back up and stand with one side vehemently. The goal of these players is not to win a reward. They want to convince as many players as possible that they are the correct faction rather than coming to a compromise. A relatively recent major conflict that has left ripples in the webfishing community is the straight title. See, when the game first released, there were cosmetic titles you could purchase for in-game currency. These titles were things like Creature or Little Lad, but important to this conflict was the inclusion of LGBTQ titles such as lesbian, queer, and so on. The issue stemmed from some players' disappointment for the lack of a straight title. The dev eventually added the title for $9,999 instead of the standard $75, explicitly stating that they did this because they thought it was funny. Allegedly, this was due to people messaging the dev and incessantly requesting it. However, this is just speculation and has not been proven. This action upset individuals on both sides of the debate. Straight players felt it was unfair to pay more for representation of an aspect of their identity which they cannot control, while queer players were frustrated that straight players received the title, given the scarcity of queer representation in media and the tendency for straight voices to dominate. Some players also expressed concern about the title being listed with straight in parentheses, which they interpreted as a doubt regarding their straightness. The majority of players were in the middle, agreeing that the implementation was fine, funny, or deserved. A due reminder that the dev is not making the game specifically for any one player and does not owe anyone anything. Please do not harass the developer and be civil with your requests. This conflict primarily unfolds outside of the game, particularly on platforms like Reddit and the Steam community pages. Both sides of the argument have been known to create posts designed to provoke outrage, so it's recommended to take anything you read with a hint of skepticism. From my discussion with players within the game, I gleaned that most players just want the arguing to stop and are tired of the drama. During the writing of this ethnography, patch 1.11 was released, and it brought to light something which is really important and worth talking about. Patch 1.11 was comprised mainly of solutions to problems the players have. The kicking and banning system is now more robust and easy to use, making it easier to remove hackers or issue players. There is now a request-only option for lobbies, which helps prevent bots from repeatedly joining lobbies. Instruments now have a volume slider, and lobbies can now be tagged so that players can tell the vibes of the lobby before joining. These are some of the major complaints that the participants I interviewed faced. Regardless of the effectiveness of this patch, it is way too early to call whether or not these are actually effective. It is clear that the developers are attentive to player feedback and are actively updating the game accordingly. Players feel that the developers are listening and are willing to make changes to enhance their gaming experience. As a result, players have become more vocal about their opinions. Seemingly contradictorily, since the patch, the online communities focused on web phishing have mostly cleared out of issues, except for technical concerns in matters related to the straight title. Now, forums are largely filled with art, memes, and screenshots, which is always a pleasure to see. Despite the controversies and issues, the web phishing community contains many kind, creative, and passionate players. My work has led me to players who host lobbies 24/7. These players give up their CPU space and time to make inclusive areas for players to join, chat, and create. These constant lobbies function as meeting points for players to meet up and fish. Within these lobbies, players have formed their own cultures under the umbrella of web phishing. Some players are frequent visitors to these lobbies and have become well known among the community. Several hosts of these lobbies were more than willing to be interviewed and informed me that despite being the frequent target of trolls, the people who stick around and visit frequently make the entire thing worthwhile. As we come to the close of this paper, I do believe it is time to reveal my hand. See, dear viewer, I've been lying to you. This paper was never about proving web phishing as culture. I'm pretty sure everyone already knows that it does. And ethnographies really shouldn't be used in this way. They are meant to support a thesis within a study of culture. I wasn't even paying tribute to the web phishing community. Well, maybe that's a part of it. In reality, I just made you sit through a full lecture introduction of anthropology. Screw your short attention span. College courses kind of rigid and hard, and they can make learning a real chore. But learning is really fun once you get past the sitting in a bright room surrounded by people who definitely do not want to be there. I wanted to teach in a way that was maybe a bit more fun and relevant to your interests, so I apologize for the deception, and I appreciate you attending this class. I'll mark you down for attendance. Your homework for this week is to play games, have fun, and keep on learning. I hope to see you next class.